The CNU is contradictory. I made some statements to that effect. One of the things that makes us an elite organization is if you ever want a simple answer, you won't be happy. Okay, you have to go to another organization that tells you that there's one way to do it. We always disagree, and but in the end, there's a synthesis. My thought about Latin America is that the urbanism in Latin America is so damn good that we need it here. My take was we don't need to export anything to them, although we're doing that. We need to learn from them. Okay, that's número uno. Okay, número dos, the problems in Latin America are so damn awful. And they're coming here so fast, like overwhelming bureaucracy, corruption, marauders, everything. Then we need to hear about that so when it comes, we're ready. I don't think we had the power to prevent it from coming. Okay, because literally it's coming all over the world. And it's not just immigration, it's just the collapse of the middle class. And these places are incredibly safe. The streets are super, by the way, there's something what's called a topologically smooth street. There are no niches to hide, have you noticed? Okay, if you read Oscar Newman, all these stupid architects make a little notch to get a shadow line, and what happens, the marauder just waits there until, like that. So all these things are absolutely, you say, why straight streets? Why can't we be picturesque? Isn't it boring? They're topologically smooth. Okay, anybody approaching, you can't hide. There's another thing that we don't understand. We think windows on the street are going to keep you safe. They actually don't, because you're going to be beside the window. If there's a window here, I don't have to stand, hey, see me, I'm the crook. No, you can just stand beside the window. What keeps you safe is the window opposite. It's the window opposite, and the window opposite is so close that you never feel safe. You can't be a marauder anywhere. We need that stuff. We need this very badly in lots of places. So I would like, Fernando was more about we, the Latinos, and what we need here, what we can contribute, what we need. What I think the Americans need is a lot of the know-how that comes from Latin America, like a lot. The second thing is the richness of the culture, which actually you say began in Spain. It actually began in Greece. And from Greece, remember Greece and Rome, when Rome collapsed, it went to Istanbul. By the way, the Roman house is this. Yeah. The atrium, the courtyard, all this. So Rome collapses, but Rome, they let it collapse because Istanbul was the show. The show was 100% Istanbul. And then Istanbul has an ascendancy of 800 years. They travel everywhere. They take Vienna, they travel up, and they're in Spain for 800 years. 800 years. Embedded. They're thrown out in the Reconquista. By the way, getting better and better. In my opinion, the best architecture is in Morocco. Because as the Muslims went there, the most sophisticated is in Morocco, just south of Spain. So then they come to Spain, they do the most fantastic architecture of all 800 years. The Reconquista takes them out, and the same people go to Latin America, like the same guys with the same guns and the same horses. We're done here, let's go conquer that. And they take the architecture, and they create a North African coast in the Southern Caribbean. Just look at the world, okay? Here is the Caribbean. Okay, from your point of view, this is the Mediterranean. The litoral of all these buildings. What does Latin America do? Colombia, it's the same thing. Someone said the Caribbean and the Mediterranean, listen to this, is a single discontinuous sea. The Caribbean and the Mediterranean are a single discontinuous sea. So you get the northern people coming up across the Atlantic with the German ideas and the English ideas and all this stuff. And then you get this other migration that actually is wired to ancient Rome. And then it comes north with us. Get it? With us. And here we are. We're part of this continuity. This isn't some odd, exotic thing I'm talking about. This is just a natural evolution of something coming north. That's what I was interested in. The other thing that I was interested in is the favela. ¿Cómo se dice? It's not the slums. Favela. Okay, we need a word. Arrabal. Is that what it is? It's a self-built. Yeah. But years ago, I'm usually real bored. I bore easily, and I went out to visit favelas in Santo Domingo, and I realized that some were very successful and some were really failures. You should tell. And so I got a Dominican architect that explained to me why this fails, and I learned one thing. If they drain, they succeed. If they're wet, they fail. Wow. You know the number of mistakes you can make? So one of the things you can do, if you're trying, and by the way, we have our own shanty towns. We have our shanty towns. You see them? You see the pictures every day in Los Angeles, everywhere. Those could be favelas that evolve instead of being decrepit, ever more horrible places. Those people are just as poor as the people who built the favelas, but the favelas that actually succeeded eventually became cities. So something that I'd like to bring up in this agony we have, but we still have 663,000. We just spent $16 billion in LA and we still have 63,000 homeless, or some incredible number. You're not solving it. I don't care what Dan Solomon says or anybody else. We're not solving it. What's happening is some kind of self-building, highly successional, American style, probably with better plumbing than the actual favela, something like that. That DNA we can bring, because there's no creativity in the solution. The Americans are not, there's no creativity. The units that Dan builds cost $600,000 per homeless house. It's pathetic. It's not going to look at the favelas in Latin America, but there's a DNA here that needs to breed with better plumbing and proper lawyering, something like that. So that's my thought of what we could do. That kind of thing would I think would be fantastic. The other thing, now I've been a fanatic of this for a long time, and we finally built a community that was patios, courtyard houses, called Alice Beach. You got to look it up, ALYS. It is the most expensive. By the way, I keep score by how much people pay for it. Okay, I'm not, because I'd love to be a saint, but the grown-ups keep score by saying how much do I make. Okay, it's the most expensive community in the United States per square foot. What's interesting about the Courtyard house is that instead of wasting, we all know that instead of wasting the yard on the edge, we put it in the middle. We know that. What we didn't realize is this, that the reason people want big lots is for privacy. Big American lots. I need a big lot. Why? Because I don't want to see my neighbor. It's not that I want more grass. I just don't want to see my neighbors. Now, to get real privacy, you got to really go out. It's really wasteful. But with a courtyard house, with a proper patio house, a real patio house, it's between everything you own and the sky. There's not a single thing in your universe that isn't yours, which is the privilege of the British aristocracy with their big houses. I step out of my castle, everything I own is mine, okay? You can have that in a 40-foot lot in Alice Beach. And it's an incredible feeling to actually really it's a magical feeling to know that it's all yours, and that you keep the doors open at night and that you're safe at 7. And it's so marketable when you get it. And by the way, ours meet code. That's not an issue. But I think that the Courtyard house is really the next big thing that's happening here, because we're getting very high density, very high prices, very high safety, and so forth. Now, they're better and worse. I'm going to tell you two things that actually make Courtyard houses fail, because there have been American Courtyard houses ever since, the people at Harvard actually brought them in. And you go in and you say, Sert built a Courtyard house, all these guys did. Jeremiah just built a Courtyard house. And you say, somehow the magic ain't here. The magic is not happening. Mm-hmm. The problem is that you can't have a Courtyard house without an arcade. When you're in a room like this and you hit wall to wall, the magic is not there. And so the arcada, even in one side, is essential. And if you say, I'm going to do it, but without the arcade, you're going to be right back at Harvard's failure in 1951, okay? Or Louis Sert's really shitty houses. Okay, so we have to know things like that. We also need to know something that I didn't know, like how wide is the courtyard to be acceptable? And should the arcade be low to let more sun in? Or should it be high so that it actually really shares the space with the courtyard? I don't know, but I think each of us should know. They're all in Antigua. If you go to Antigua, you see this one, that one, and everything. If you can manage to get in the houses, you start measuring this stuff. And the amount of know-how that we don't have that this group can actually do, we should actually take a trip to Antigua okay, and measure the stuff or buy the books, etc. Because there's a lot to be known that I don't know yet. I don't know whether the sun should go south or north. Bruce, yes.
What about ventilation and humidity and wind power?
Okay. The other thing that happens, I happen to live in a kind of courtyard house in Miami, and it's really hot. And I can only use it in a cool day. There's something called the zaguán, okay, in which that gate that you showed, that gate that's an open gate, that lets the breeze into the courtyard and out the other side. If you make an American-style courtyard house closed, that you enter into a room, and then you go out into the patio, there's no circulation. And unless the room is cool, it's really a hellhole. Okay, and I live that in my own house in Coral Gables. I live that. It's so important. Don't forget this one. Okay? Yes.
Cincinnati has saguanes.
Yes?
Yes.
Right here?
Yes. You have the Italianate type.
Yeah.
Then you have a side entry.
Yeah.
It's not like the Latin American saguan that can work also as a carport,
Yeah, so that's even better.
which is fantastic.
That's an upgrade,
And you
yeah.
can reinterpret that space multiple different.
Yeah.
It's much skinnier. It's like
Is this in single-family houses?
this is multifamily.
Multi, yes.
Only.
Perfect, yeah.
Yeah.
Great,
And
great.
it leads you to the stair, and then you go to the second.
See, what happens is, I know we're going to start doing this stuff here, New Urbanism, and we're going to make the mistakes and gives this damn thing a bad reputation. Oh, I'll do it without the zaguán, or I'll do it for 3 stories high. All this shit that you realize is more delicate than we think. And then what happens is, it didn't sell, buddy. And then we all hear it didn't sell, and then it's over. You see what I mean? By the way, it's not associated with, this is not associated with hot weather. Scandinavia is full of courtyard houses with zaguanes. Sweden. We think it's hot weather. No, it's a privacy move. It's a privacy play. It's not a weather play. It works really well. In fact, it works fantastically in the climates that are cold because you get more sun. So don't think this is just hot weather stuff. Yes,
The
another.
sun reflects into the courtyard.
Look, what happened is the sun is in the northern and sun's to the south. And usually it's very rare that you have that you have habitable rooms on both sides of a house, right? Because it has to be a very wide lot. So somewhere you have a wall that's a blank. And then somewhere you have the habitable room. Should the sunlight come into the habitable room, or should the sunlight bounce off the wall and enter the room, thereby softening it and not heating the room? I suspect it's a climate thing. In the north, you want the sun to come in. In the south, you want that wall to take the heat and just give you the light with that sun. I don't know. For once, there's stuff to actually study that hasn't been done before, at least from an American point of view. It's just something that needs to be recovered. They knew about it. We don't know about it, but the lessons are there. So I think that to me is incredibly exciting to do that. And you reminded me of something. Of course, the cars go in this zaguán, which I'd forgotten about that, but that's what they do. The garage is the zaguán and the breeze is there. And most cars look good enough that you can live with them. They're not a problem. So those are the things that we were really excited about. I was going to bring one more thing up. The problem with this single courtyard is that every hose and broken pot and any piece of junk that you own is completely visible at all times. It's really a blight. You know, we all have shit. It's perfectly functional, but it just doesn't look good. And
That's why you have the back then.
you need a traspatio. You need the patio and the traspatio. Okay, the traspatio is absolutely necessary because of the junk we all have. It can be tiny, it doesn't have to be architecturally appealing, but don't think that a courtyard of this size of this room is going to contain all the shit that we all own. So you see what I'm saying? So I would say that all these things, obviously I've done a lot of thinking about it, but I think that actually if this can become a collective center of expertise for the CNU, for ourselves, it would be fantastic. By the way, you don't have to speak Spanish. Okay, in every store in Antigua, they sell brownies and you can drink the water. So you're safe.
Speak
Okay.
about self-building in the context of tiny
Yeah, okay, I'm going to show you a project. Okay, this is called Ladera, which is actually Cleveland. This is in a place called Cleveland, Texas, and it's cleaved land. It means the sloped land. It's the old ancient, some kind of Anglo-Saxon word, Cleveland, which is Ladera, which is a slope.
It's aspirational because it's totally flat.
It's always it's Ladera. Yeah, Cleveland, but Ladera is that, okay? Now, I wanted to call attention to a couple of things. There are really 3 models in Latin America. This is actually self-built. And it's okay, but it's a mess. Okay, it's very articulated. No one's going to fall in love with this. This is one model. It's a self-built, aspiring to be a kind of American libertarian thing. This is what the developers build all over Latin America in an incredible volume. They're really trying to do this. Incredible volume. And I think we need to analyze what doesn't work about it. And there's plenty to be said. There's a lot that works about it, a lot that doesn't work about it. Okay? But that's by developers. First one self-built, that's by developers. The actual model is this. What the Latin Americans did, they always build the wall. They always build the wall, even while it's still fields. It's still open space, etc., but the block is actually defined. I believe I have another slide that shows it. No, shit. Okay. I took this slide out. But they always build the wall. So at any time, this city's finished. And you can actually do whatever you want inside with it. So you build your house, and your neighbor does slaughter hogs. That's my thing. That's how I make my living. And you're not bothering your neighbor. So the remarkable thing is the ability, which no American house has, of mixing classes. In the US, every class distinction is made public because everything is visible to the neighbor. For example, if you're so poor that you have to put your indoor furniture outside, which is apparently not done among WASPs, okay? You know what I mean? You don't do this shit. Suddenly I'm called in, Andres, this is really going to pot. I say, oh, what's going on? He says, look at that couch. I said, no, that's just an indoor couch, okay? So what you have is somebody that can't afford two couches or that has bought a new couch for the inside, got to put it on the outside, they can't store the thing. And suddenly, because of this stupid American single-family typology, which only serves for the middle class and above, you get a socioeconomic crisis. And people say, I don't want anybody of lesser income living anywhere near me because look at that. Nobody's breaking a law. They're just putting a couch outdoors. This internalizes. I don't know whether this still exists, but I stayed in Antigua. I stayed in an inn that was a paradise run by Americans. Next door was 5 or 6 units of much less expensive housing. And next door was a truck repair facility. Mm-hmm. Bam, bam, bam. And the street is fantastic. Everybody photographs that street. The ability to sustain people of different incomes and do mixed use. We talk about American cities with mixed use. Mixed use is a disaster in the United States, incredibly hard to handle because of the inability to mask it. Everything is expressed on the outside. Okay? I'm not saying we do this straight. We might have to add alleys because these people didn't have vehicles. By the way, this is Trinidad in Cuba, which the blessing of communism has prevented its redevelopment. Communism also stops demolitions because real estate doesn't have speculative value. It has utility value. It's a house. If the building's there, it's worth something. It doesn't have an additional plusvalia, right? So communism, that's what the communism doesn't develop things. So thank God they saved Trinidad. But here you see the extraordinary beauty of one of these cities in one story still. That's why I say, I urge you, don't go visit the ones that have redeveloped because you're gonna find in the dark, okay? So this is, Antigua, Trinidad, you can go to them. I had a slide which was taken out that actually had the city, had the walls all in and lots of agrarian stuff still inside. So you basically begin and you let people develop at their own speed, and then you end up eventually with a place that becomes a tourist destination.
One of the reasons, too, is in Latin America, the laws are such that if you don't give use to the land, you lose the land.
Say it louder.
There are laws, and they vary country to country. I know in Ecuador, if you didn't use the land for 5 years, you lost the land. So the building of the wall is a way to preserve your property as private property. Yeah. Otherwise, you lose it because they want the property to be productive, and they're discouraging land speculation.
Yeah. Now, what I don't understand is with this, why you can see already there, before the revolution, they were building something else.
But it does have the effect of the city being complete.
What? Yes.
The walls.
Yes, but you can see that there's something that doesn't like this in the system. And I don't fully understand why that begins to happen, okay? It just degenerates in the corners. I don't understand.
Because they keep inviting people from the U.S., just as we're going down to the end of the... I know, but they keep inviting people from the U.S. to get guidance on how to continue development.
That's another problem.
And so that's one of the...
Okay, so I want to now show that Fernando and I have a client in Texas that has huge pieces of land. And he said, how do I make housing? His concern is, how do I make housing less expensive? And we studied particularly Fernando studies all the technologies that are available. We've got some great ideas. But in the end, when you speak to developers, what they come up with is, we haven't got the labor. We haven't got the labor. Over and over again. They'll say a block is more expensive, the regulators are terrible, but the fact that there's no labor. And then we have 800,000 immigrants coming north, all of which have actually built houses for themselves because the developers are not building for them, right? The skill of self-building is permeates Latin America. They're all coming in and they are a problem. They're a problem, but they're actually the solution. So we said he had all these lands. He has so much land. He says, what do I do with it? Fernando and I had the idea. Let's make a town for these immigrants. Have them build their own houses. That means that they learn how to build it with American codes. So somebody like Fernando gets the permits, supervises so they know this is a plumbing pipe, this is how we do it. They intrinsically learn how to be builders and they end up with a house. And then the condition, we don't sell them the house. They get very close to owning it, but you want them to work for you. That's the deal. That's why the developer is giving the land away, is I know it's a company town, okay, but nevertheless, they're getting a house and our guy's getting labor. So I want to show you that. So this is what we did, and I didn't want to have more architecture than necessary, because in fact, what I expect, you can see it's a topologically smooth situation. I expect this to be painted. I want to do as little as possible so that they actually have agency. There are two kinds of buildings here. There are apartment buildings that are 2 stories that are actually built by the developers here. You can see them. They live here in these apartments while they build these houses, while they build their houses. Do you understand? They pay rent. Okay, so here it is. This is the wall. In order to get the streets that are socially tight, no cars on the street, we introduce alleys to allow that very tight space that you have, okay? So there's an alley system which they don't use in Mexico. There's also another problem, which is these people are gonna have trucks. They're gonna have 1 truck, 2 trucks, 3 trucks, 4 trucks, 5 trucks. The more trucks, the more they rise in class, because it means they can start businesses. So we gave ourselves a task. I said, I want every house to accommodate not 1 car, but 6 trucks. Okay, you see what I'm saying? Because I expect success. So 6 trucks are important, but you do get charming streets. Absolutely minimum landscape. I think there's too much grass here. That was just for political reasons. All this grass will die. Nobody cares about it. Okay? But you can see the thing. And then in the corners, we have incubators for shops, which as long as you get out of the way, everybody will start shops. What they need and it'll be funded from Mexico. And there's an incredible amount of skill to do everything, to do the best food. That's not a problem. So we have the shops, but these are apartments that then decant to here. Okay, next. So these are the plans. Now the plans involve, these are the apartments here, right? These are the apartments and these are the houses. You see, they're very long because they have this is the walkway, the paseo. This is the paseo. There are lots of squares because they play soccer in massive quantities, okay? Lots of football. So you get these things. But basically, you enter, there's a saguan, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, etc. Although Fernando and I disagree, I think we can give them the floor plan, but we think they should do whatever as long as they meet code. We've already given them the front facade, we've given them the sidewalls for stability. So they may have a better floor plan, they may need more bedrooms, whatever it is, but to get the permit, we said this. You come in here, the first patio, which is the neat one, the traspatio is the mess. By the way, this is the covered garage. This is the truck pulled in twice. This is the truck into the traspatio. And then there's a second unit that can be built later, and this can be 2 stories, actually. This can be 2 stories for various reasons. They certainly build this one themselves. So these are the units. This is the pavement where they will actually do a lot of stuff that they do. There's going to be a lot of stuff lying around, a lot of repairs of things, a lot of tire changing, a lot of exchanges. It's a kind of marketplace back here. I'm not telling them what to do. I'm just allowing them to do whatever they want to do in the back. You want to do whatever. You killed the hog already. You want to hose it down? Fine. Okay. We got a drain here. Whatever. I don't want to alter any kind of their behavior, but I also don't want to make it public because that's actually constraining. So this is the plan. And as you can see, it's tight here. And there's no reason why I can't. And it's not picturesque. I'm sorry. It doesn't do like that because that's actually incredibly expensive to do it. something else is going to have to happen. It's like the law of the Indies.
It sticks out to cover the parking. Show them the last unit. The last
Yeah, this is
unit
the-
sticks out.
This is the covered one. And this is a patio, a paved patio. That happens to have you can pull 2 cars in. By the way, if you're really successful, you can have 9 cars, 9 trucks, go for it. Start a plumbing company, whatever
From
you
the
want.
street, you'll not see all of that.
Now, there's something about, I live 6 months of the year in Europe, and I have to tell you, between you and me, they hate their immigrants. They just, because they're getting a lot of government help, they're getting people who don't want to work, and they're treated very well. We treat our immigrants horribly. First of all, they have to fight their way in. They have to be so elite, so wanting to improve themselves to cross. You've heard the stories. They've got to cross the Straits of Florida. They've got to come cross the continent. They've got to fight their way through jungles. You've heard the stories. Okay, those are the best people in the world. They're just so ready to work. So already our cruel American system has culled the people who want to work. They want to work so badly, and we actually don't let them work. So what we want to do is just take care of them. And the deal is here. You come here, developer builds this, we will have this,
It's a shell.
we'll write, we have a primitive contract that doesn't quite give them ownership. By the way, you know that 80% of the people who live in Paris don't have ownership. 80% is rental in Paris and generally in France. It's not dishonorable to not have that. But I am afraid of the flipping, that we're going to lose them. Okay, so that's paternalistic, but that's it. And here you see the situation. Lots of patios where they can make a mess. That's fine.
You providing the foundation too, or just the?
Yes,
the
we
shell.
provide, and actually, and the slab,
The slab.
yeah,
Yeah.
the slab, and probably the roof.
Like a
Okay, and
commercial
by the
shell.
way, the way they get paid, we give them, and I've seen this done. A truck comes in and gives them any number, I don't know what the number is, 24 concrete block a week. So after work, they lay the 24 or 48 concrete block. You basically don't, you just deliver the material slowly. In fact, they probably have to earn the material. The plumbing comes in like that. Here it is. Fernando shows up. I'm talking about this guy showing up and says, this is how you lay a block. This is how you lay rebar. By the time they're done building a house, they are electricians, plumbers, stucco people, whatever. Okay, so symbiotic. It's really incredible. Actually, one of the things I want to do in Mexico when we go in a couple of weeks, I want to get a Mexican developers to build this. So it's the opposite of what you're doing.
They understand it, and the people that are going to live in there understand it because they're doing that at home.
Yeah.
Every single person that you see that comes, and the busboy, the girls that are cleaning the hotel, they're sending money home and building a house in Mexico. They understand the self-building, the gradual building.
By the
So
way,
this is natural.
this is happening all the way around here illegally.
Yeah, it happens around.
And giving immigrants a really bad reputation because they're building trash, mobile homes, etc. So we're not frightening anybody by doing this here. This is becoming a disaster. So it's pretty well selected. Okay, so there it is. Now, we don't know whether it's exactly a flat roof or not a flat roof. I don't know. I like the thought that they can build a second story later, that this actually becomes, or partially, a second story. We disagree on things. He's a very good tech guy, and I am a very good sociologist. So it's where we make a perfect team, but it doesn't mean we agree, because there are different things. I would like to also show this. Now, Fernando insisted on the ornament for pride and so forth. That's prefab. I just wanted to leave it alone so that they do their own ornament. Do you see? But I think actually that we can never sell this to the powers that be in Texas unless it looked better.
They see this picture, they're excited because they've been
Yeah, they're
there.
excited. They're
But if
excited.
they heard the concept, they would be horrified.
Yeah. And you see what happens is, as architecture style is camouflage. Don't think of it anything else. It's not a branch of ethics or art. You're camouflaging something, okay? That you're poor or that you're rich or whatever. And so this is our camouflage to get a permit in Texas. That's the entrance. The grass is just camouflage, right? That's not going to be there for 2 seconds. There are people there's a difference in a plaza and a park, or even a plaza and a square. The Anglos like greens, the Hispanics like pavement. And we like our parking lots better than our, etc. And fine, we let them do it. So these are the corner stores, these are the apartments, and then these are the facades like that. There's just enough variety. But I think that actually between just the activity and so forth, this might work out. And if it doesn't work, we just change something. Okay? Now, I want to show something else.
Can I ask a quick question on that?
Yeah, go ahead.
The ownership piece, you mentioned possibly not having ownership, or maybe it's a rent to own? How are you thinking about that?
My feeling is that they shouldn't, I don't know, I'd take your advice. My feeling is they should be given to them. They should be given, but some people say they've got to really earn it, but I think they can earn it by sweat equity, by improvement. I'd rather not load them up with
The
debt.
idea is that you don't own the shell and then never finish it or sell it off for a land.
Yeah, no, we really don't want it
We
sold.
actually really want the families to finish up, so we want to
Yeah.
hold the reins until
Yeah.
it's done, now it's yours.
So the way we convince this big deal developer, who happens to be the usual billionaire, that is now the cool thing is to build towns, these billionaires are building towns, is we say, you ain't gonna build your town unless you build this. Because that's all we can do to actually make your housing more affordable, is control the labor force. So that's, you see, it all works like that. But I'd like to go to Mexico and actually get Mexican developers that we already know to actually do this, and maybe they will ask for rent. Okay, now here's something else. This is for Americans. This is the American version. There is something that I would like to introduce to the new urbanism that was actually generated independently called field urbanism. And field urbanism, I ran across, first of all, it's a theoretical proposition that was actually noticed by the Academy. And to give you the extent of it, the guy who wrote the book on field urbanism is called
Stan Allen.
Stan Allen, and he's the dean at Princeton. So it's way up there, field urbanism. And what it involves, there are two generations of factories in this country. There are the early factories that have windows with the brick, the beautiful New England factories. And then when air conditioning and good lighting came in, the factories stopped having windows. The 1960s factories don't have windows. And they sit there, abandoned in many places. People like Tony Goldman discovered, and it's a lecture in itself, that these are very desirable to a new generation that actually is quite allergic to architecture. They don't want to be sold, they want the, and I can give you lots of anecdotes, but one of them is, we did the downtown of Birmingham, Michigan, which is the Greenwich of the Midwest, 25 years ago. And when we came back, apparently they asked us to come back and to do a tune-up for their very successful town. And when I realized, I brought a team to do the tune-up, and we had this beautiful Main Street that we had done, and we were offering free steak dinners, and all the young people in the charrette disappeared every night. They go somewhere else. They didn't want the steak, they didn't want the Main Street, they had nothing to do with it. And eventually I got miffed, and I said, where are they going? And we went to this warehouse district that was crawling with young people, just crawling. A really shitty warehouse district without windows. No new urbanist anything, parking lots were everywhere. There was no front and back. It was just exactly what we tell you all not to do. It was cheap space, and everything cool was there. The yoga studio, the architects were there, everything that was cool was there. And I looked at it, and I'll tell you just one anecdote. Bob Gibbs is a retail consultant, the guy who did Birmingham, Michigan. And frankly, our Main Street was supposedly successful, and it was just empty on a Saturday night. I went with Bob. I said, Bob, and we stood there watching the place crawling like anthill. Yeah. It felt like an anthill. So many young people running around, eating bad food and music and everything else. Cars everywhere. And he looked at this and said, that doesn't work. And I said, boy, this is a real problem. Because what doesn't work is the Main Street, and what does work is this. He just couldn't see it because the filter of new urbanism did not permit him to see it. And I told him to sit there until he understood that it worked, and then he came to us because I wasn't going to listen to him anymore. And so I'm going to show you what we learned. But already Tony Goldman had done this in Miami in a place called Wynwood. And this is worthy of a lecture, how he handled it with this, whatever, kids. All this stuff is interesting. Two things I want to point out. The maintenance is everything is white. So I said, why is everything white? He says, because I get this guy from Central America with a spray gun. And whenever he sees a problem, he sprays it. Okay, so all the interiors are white. For maintenance reasons, curiously enough. Now, what he sells is not useful stuff. He actually sells art. And he says, when I sell useful stuff like actual khaki pants, people come in and they do the purchase, then they feel they have to leave. But with art, you don't have to leave. You can come every night, date all day. And he says, furthermore, I don't have to buy any goods because the artists will put their own goods up and just handle everything. So everything's art. They sell art. Then there was a lot of graffiti. He added to the graffiti, okay? Art inside, very cheap structures, a lot of canvas, a lot of this miracle stuff called AstroTurf, which is really good now. This is a hill made out of sand and AstroTurf. Be sure you get the kids in. By the way, this is the furniture. It's old tractor tires. And it's the coolest place. And now, of course, it's gentrified and they're building 60-story buildings. Look at this. You know what he told the cops? First of all, and this is something, you need to get people to drink outdoors. The way you do it is you say, I will hire 3 policemen every night to make sure there's no trouble. Now, the police department loves that because they get salaries for 3 policemen. But he says the policemen have to come in unarmed and just be groovy. See this guy? He's listening to a band. So the cop is part of it. They love it. It's not like I'm here to beat you up. There's a police car somewhere else. So it's on and on. There's this brilliant marketing, brilliant stuff. And I once lectured on this, but I think there's a lot to be said here and to be learned. Now, this, with last CNU, do you know where the cool place was? It's not where they told us to go. It was field urbanism. I forget what it's called. The South End. Did anybody go to the South End last year? See, they told us, go to this cool place, go to that cool place, go to this cool place. Somehow my crew discovered the really cool place, which is the South End, which actually is the old warehouse district. Notice the parking lots. Now, the parking lots, I can tell you about how do you handle no parking lot. Let's do it another time. And then the New York. Have you seen these things? Which is just bullshit. It's like every other city should have them, right? Because it's the same vintage building. All the cornices should be falling off at the same time in all the buildings of the same vintage. Have you noticed it's only New York that gets these things everywhere? The latest version is not even this. These are now beautiful. Mm-hmm. They've replaced them with really beautiful. They look like New Orleans gallery. They say, we're permanent, let's make it nice. And actually, it's part of this lean urbanism again that's happening. So one of the things that you can do, if you want an arcade, just get this stuff. Like, it's a way of thinking. Just don't gentrify it because it frightens the young people.
Scaffolding.
Scaffolding. I want to say, this is New York. I didn't take this picture for this purpose. But look, this is an expensive restaurant. Italian name, white tablecloth underneath that. We have to learn to notice things that we actually are not accustomed to notice. This is not a problem. This is a fantastic way of learning. What does it look like? So this is Birmingham, Michigan. The wealthiest people conceivable live here. The people in the shopping malls. This is the main street that we fixed. We were having steak up and down here every night. This is where the kids were. No, here's where the kids were. We went over. Where are you? And Bob and I sat here and said, this doesn't work in this corner. This doesn't work. And I realized we were in trouble. So anyway, we looked at it. Now, when we did the plan 25 years ago, we coded this for the demolition. We said, as soon as this is over, and this is the main street, kick in and demolish it. That's what we did 25 years ago. So when we realized that this was already working, we went over here, and then we said, no, we have to do exactly the opposite. We have to code to preserve it because it's the coolest thing ever, okay? So this is what the traditional main street looks like that we fixed. Nothing glorious, but amazing. Multiplex cinemas, everything you wanted. Buy the book, New Urbanism in America, incredibly successful. I was bored to death with my steak dinner, just like the kids. Okay, that's what it looks like. I'd be proud of that. But it really was. In the end, I have to admit, it's really boring. Okay, so this is the other one. Forget what it's called. I forget what this is called, but you can actually see that there's several lessons here. One of them is that there are parking lots everywhere, but none of them are wider than one tray. And one tray is about 70 feet wide building to building, which is a really good plaza. So if you think about Italy, Italy has plazas that are full of cars, but you never forget their plazas because they're small. They're not a big parking lot. It's a plaza that happens to have cars in it. And the phenomenon here is exactly the same. You never get more than one tray. This is aberrant, okay? So you get this, there are very few streets. It's a mess front and back, right? You see it, front, the back, the yoga studio, nothing's maintained. So this is what we drew. We said, this is what we have for an analytical purpose, right? Look at the percentage of parking. It's really high. That's the percentage of parking. And of course, I would actually re-asphalt it. I wouldn't leave it bumpy. I would have nice, clean, small aggregate asphalt. Something that happens, asphalt, if you hose it every night at nighttime and you put floodlights on it, just glows. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. What Tony Goldman does every night, some guy goes out, hoses everything wet, keeps it from being hot, but it's got that glow. The other thing he has, chain link fences with glancing floodlights are actually beautiful. They're jewel-like. You just have to light them right, the chain link fence, right? So this, what we learned from Tony Goldman is a bunch of tricks like that. There's a lot of management also. And so we said, okay, to fix it, and then we analyzed and said, what is actually a pedestrian frontage that has sidewalks? It was irrelevant. You don't need sidewalks. Okay? There was no pattern. Sometimes you get sidewalks, sometimes you don't. So that's not the issue. The issue, I think, is very cheap space. At the time we did this, these buildings were $30 a square foot. $30 a square foot with air conditioning and electrical. That's what the big boxes were. Now they're probably 60 or 70, but compare that to anything else. It's $30 a square foot. The parking is you have to build anyway. The lighting. So this analysis didn't work. We did say there's potential for additional buildings. We did propose that. And then we proposed that, and I don't know what we were thinking, but that maybe we could enhance art, public art in the form of graffiti, until the young people told me, oh, graffiti is what is called, it's so last year. Okay, graffiti art is so last year. You gotta keep up. And then there were some signs. We did some arcades. These are actually additional arcades. So that's it. And so in the end, we kept this going.